The Young and the Restless Spoilers. Full. The Young and the Restless Spoilers. Jack fights for his life as Patty frames Diane in a deadly new twist. The Young and the Restless is heading into one of its most intense and emotionally devastating turns yet, as Jack Abbott is rushed to the hospital after a brutal stabbing that leaves his life hanging by a thread. What began as a terrifying confrontation with Patty Williams will quickly spiral into a full-blown crisis, not only for Jack's survival but also for Diane Jenkins Abbott's future. The attack itself is horrifying enough, but the aftermath may prove even more dangerous, because Patty is not simply running from what she has done. Instead, she is twisting the story, rewriting the scene, and pushing everyone toward one conclusion: Diane is responsible. And if Patty succeeds, Diane may find herself fighting a battle that is almost impossible to win, while the man she loves lies unconscious in an operating room, bleeding, broken, and slipping closer to death with every passing second. Jack's arrival at the hospital will be urgent, chaotic, and filled with fear. The severity of his stab wound will immediately send doctors and nurses into emergency mode, and it may become clear very quickly that simple treatment will not be enough. Jack may need emergency surgery if there is any chance of saving his life. The wound is not just painful, it is dangerous, deep, and potentially catastrophic. Jack has survived countless emotional wars, business betrayals, family battles, and personal heartbreaks, but this time the fight is brutally physical. He is not standing in the Abbott living room defending his family name. He is not facing Victor Newman across a boardroom table. He is lying on a hospital bed, pale and weak, surrounded by machines, as medical staff fight to keep his body from giving up. For the Abbott family, this will be a nightmare beyond imagination, because Jack has always been the center of strength, pride, and stability. Seeing him reduced to a critical patient will shake everyone who loves him. But while Jack fights for survival, another fight will be unfolding outside the operating room. A fight over truth, blame, and control. Patty Williams will remain determined to protect herself by painting Diane as the villain. According to the Y&R Spoilers, Patty will continue insisting that Diane Jenkins Abbott is the one responsible, and she will somehow try to gain the upper hand against her in Tuesday's episode. This means Patty will not behave like someone consumed by guilt. She will behave like someone desperate, strategic, and dangerous. Patty may cry, tremble, and act traumatized, but beneath that instability, she will understand one thing clearly: if Diane is blamed, Patty has a chance to escape the consequences of her own actions. That makes her more dangerous than ever, because a cornered Patty is never just frightened. She becomes unpredictable. She becomes manipulative. And when Patty believes she has a reason to destroy someone, she will use every emotional weapon she has. Diane, meanwhile, will be trapped in the worst possible position. She will continue to insist that she is innocent, but innocence may not be enough when the evidence, the timing, and Patty's accusations appear to be closing in around her. Diane has a complicated history, and that history may work against her. People may not rush to believe her, even if she tells the truth. Some may wonder whether Diane is capable of going too far under pressure. Others may remember all the time she has manipulated situations to protect herself. That makes the current crisis even more painful, because Diane may be telling the truth with more desperation and honesty than ever before, yet every word may sound suspicious to those already prepared to doubt her. She will have to plead not just for freedom, but for faith. She will have to convince Detective James Burrow that she did not attack Jack, that she did not flee Dr. Lawrence Markham's care in order to target her own husband, and that Patty's version of events is a lie designed to bury her. The situation may become even more complicated when Dr. Lawrence Markham enters the picture. Markham could confirm Patty's story, or at least provide enough support for it to make Diane look guilty. If Markham claims that Diane escaped his care or disappeared under suspicious circumstances, that could give Patty's accusation a level of credibility it would not otherwise have. Suddenly, this would not be just Patty making wild claims. It would become a narrative supported by a doctor, someone who appears professional, rational, and believable. That is exactly what Diane will be up against. She will not simply be defending herself from Patty's emotional accusations. She may be forced to challenge a version of events that sounds medically and logically plausible to Detective Burrow. If Markham says Diane was unstable, unreachable, or capable of leaving his care with dangerous intent, then Diane's denial could look like panic rather than truth. And once the police begin to see Diane as a suspect, every expression, every tear, every angry denial could be interpreted against her. For Diane, the emotional stakes are unbearable. Jack is not just the victim in this crisis. He is the one person whose survival may also determine whether Diane's truth can be fully heard. If Jack wakes up and remembers what happened, he could be the only voice strong enough to cut through Patty and Markham's version of events. But if Jack remains unconscious, Diane is left alone against a storm of suspicion. That creates a cruel and devastating tension. Diane will want to be by Jack's side, to hold his hand, to beg him to survive, to whisper that she is there and that he cannot leave her. But at the same time, she may be pulled into questioning, cornered by Detective Burrow, and forced to defend herself while her heart is still in the operating room. Every minute away from Jack will feel like a betrayal of love. Every accusation will feel like another knife being twisted into her own chest. She will be grieving, terrified, and furious all at once. Detective James Burrow may find himself in a difficult position as well. On one hand, Diane will push him to believe her. She will likely insist that Patty is lying, that the story being told does not match the truth, and that Jack is the real priority. On the other hand, Burrow cannot simply ignore Patty's accusation if Markham appears to support it. He will have to follow the evidence, even if that evidence has been carefully manipulated. Diane may become increasingly frustrated as she realizes that being innocent does not automatically make her safe. Burrow may not accuse her outright at first, but he may ask pointed questions that make it clear she is under suspicion. Where was she before the attack? Why would Patty say Diane was involved? What exactly happened under Markham's care? Did Diane have an opportunity to reach Jack? Did anyone see her near the scene? Each question may tighten the trap around her, even if Diane answers honestly. Patty's advantage may come from the fact that she understands emotional theater. She knows how to look wounded, frightened, and unstable enough to be pitied, but coherent enough to plant doubt. She may present herself as someone who tried to warn people, someone who saw Diane becoming dangerous, someone who was ignored until it was too late. That kind of performance could be powerful, especially if she frames herself as another victim. Patty may not simply say, Diane attacked Jack. She may claim that Diane created the conditions that led to the violence, that Diane escaped supervision, that Diane targeted Jack, and that Patty was somehow caught in the middle. This would allow Patty to shift the focus away from her own actions and onto Diane's supposed instability. It would also place Diane in a painful position. The more emotionally she reacts, the more Patty can point to that emotion as proof that Diane is out of control. Dr. Markham's possible involvement raises even darker questions. If he confirms Patty's story, is he doing so because he genuinely believes it? Because he has been misled? Or because he has his own reason for protecting Patty and targeting Diane? The spoilers suggest he may help make everyone think Diane fled his care to go after Jack, and that detail is especially damaging. It paints Diane not as a frightened wife, but as a dangerous woman who slipped past medical supervision with violent intent. Whether Markham is intentionally lying or simply allowing Patty's version to influence him, the result may be the same. Diane's credibility will collapse at the worst possible moment. And in Genoa City, once suspicion takes root, it spreads fast. The truth may still exist, but it becomes harder to see beneath layers of fear, history, and manipulation. Meanwhile, Jack's medical crisis will continue to drive the emotional core of the episode. The hospital setting will heighten every fear. The harsh lights, the hurried voices, the sound of monitors, the sight of blood and surgical equipment, all of it will make the situation feel immediate and terrifying. Jack's condition may worsen before it improves, forcing doctors to make quick decisions. If surgery is necessary, the risk will be enormous. A severe stabbing can involve internal damage, blood loss, infection, or complications that cannot be fully known until doctors operate. The uncertainty will make everyone feel helpless. For Diane, that helplessness will be unbearable because she may not even be allowed to focus only on Jack. She will be forced to split herself between love and survival, between praying for Jack and defending her own name. The cruelest part of Patty's plan is that it attacks Diane where she is most vulnerable. Diane has spent a long time trying to rebuild her life, repair relationships, and prove that she is not the same woman many people still remember. Her marriage to Jack represents more than romance. It represents redemption, belonging, and the possibility that she truly has a place in the Abbott family. Patty's accusation threatens to destroy all of that in one blow. If people believe Diane harmed Jack, then every step Diane has taken toward a new life could be erased. She would not be seen as a wife fighting for her husband. She would be seen as a threat who finally went too far. That is why Diane's pleas to Detective Burrow will be so intense. She will not just be asking him to solve a crime. She will be begging him not to let Patty steal the truth, not to let Markham's words bury her, and not to let Jack wake up if he wakes up to find that his wife has already been condemned. Patty, however, may feel that she is the one who has been wronged. In her mind, the truth may be flexible, shaped by fear and obsession. She may convince herself that Diane deserves blame, even if Patty's own hands are the ones stained by the attack. That makes her psychologically dangerous. A calculated liar is dangerous, but a person who begins to believe her own lie is even worse. Patty could twist guilt into accusation, fear into righteousness, and panic into a mission. She may see Diane not just as a convenient scapegoat, but as someone who must be punished. This emotional distortion could fuel her every move. If Diane pushes back, Patty may escalate. If Detective Burrow hesitates, Patty may become more dramatic. If Markham's support is questioned, Patty may produce another detail, another claim, another emotional outburst designed to keep suspicion fixed on Diane. The confrontation between Diane and Burrow could become one of the most important scenes of the episode. Diane may begin with controlled denial, trying to speak clearly and logically. But as the questions continue, and as Jack's condition remains uncertain, her composure may crack. She may demand to know why anyone would believe Patty after what has happened. She may accuse Markham of twisting the situation. She may insist that Jack knows the truth and that the police should wait until he can speak. But Burrow may remind her that Jack may not be able to speak for some time and that the investigation cannot simply stop because Diane says it should. That would push Diane closer to panic, because she will realize the system is moving without the one witness who could save her. The more urgent she becomes, the more vulnerable she looks. The more she raises her voice, the more Burrow may see desperation. And the more desperate she appears, the easier it becomes for Patty's story to gain power. At the same time, the hospital may become a pressure cooker where every character is forced to choose what they believe. Some may instinctively fear Patty because of her history, while others may hesitate because Diane's past makes her an easy target. The uncertainty itself will be explosive. No one will have the full picture. Everyone will be reacting to fragments. Jack stabbed, Patty accusing Diane, Markham supporting the idea that Diane fled care, Diane denying everything, and Burrow trying to assemble the truth from a mess of fear and contradiction. That is classic Young and the Restless drama at its most intense, not just violence, but the emotional and psychological fallout that follows. The attack is the spark, but the real fire comes from suspicion, loyalty, and betrayal. Jack's silence will haunt every scene. As long as he remains unconscious, or in surgery, everyone else gets to speak for him. Patty speaks. Markham speaks. Diane speaks. Burrow questions. But Jack, the person at the center of the trauma, cannot defend Diane, cannot accuse Patty, cannot reveal what he saw, and cannot reassure anyone that he will survive. His silence gives Patty room to manipulate. It gives Markham room to shape the narrative. It gives Burrow only incomplete evidence. And it gives Diane the unbearable fear that the truth may die if Jack does. That emotional weight may drive Diane to a breaking point. She may not simply worry about being arrested or blamed. She may be terrified that Jack will never wake up knowing she fought for him, never hear her say she did not betray him, never open his eyes and recognize that she was not his enemy. As the episode builds, Patty may appear to gain ground. If Markham confirms her claims in any convincing way, Burrow may have no choice but to treat Diane as a serious person of interest. Diane may not be immediately arrested, but she could feel the walls closing in. She may be warned not to leave, questioned more aggressively, or watched closely. That alone would be devastating. The woman who wants nothing more than to stand beside her husband may instead be treated like the person who put him on that hospital bed. Patty may watch from a distance, perhaps with fear hidden beneath satisfaction, realizing that her plan is working. But Patty's advantage may not be as secure as she thinks. Lies built in panic often leave cracks. A detail may not match. A timeline may be too convenient. Markham's statement may raise questions of its own. Diane's emotional insistence may eventually strike Burrow not as guilt, but as genuine terror. The truth may be buried, but it is not gone. The biggest question is whether Jack will survive long enough to expose what really happened. His emergency surgery could become the emotional climax of the episode, with doctors fighting desperately to control the damage and stabilize him. Diane may be left waiting outside, unable to breathe, haunted by the possibility that the last moments of Jack's life may be remembered through Patty's lie. If the doctors emerge with grim news, Diane's world could collapse. If they say Jack made it through surgery but remains critical, the relief will be fragile and incomplete. Survival would not mean safety. Jack could still face complications. He could wake with confusion. He could remember only pieces. Or he could remain unconscious while the legal case against Diane grows stronger. That uncertainty will keep the tension alive. For Patty, Jack's survival may be both a threat and a problem. If Jack wakes up with a clear memory, Patty's entire story could collapse. That may push her into even more desperate behavior. She may need to keep Diane under suspicion long enough to protect herself, or she may try to influence what others believe before Jack can speak. If Patty senses that Burrow is not fully convinced, she may escalate again. Her need to control the narrative could become dangerous, especially if she realizes that Diane will not stop fighting. Patty may have expected Diane to break down, but Diane Jenkins Abbott is not someone who gives up easily. The more Patty pushes, the more Diane may become determined to uncover every lie, every manipulation, and every hidden motive behind Markham's involvement. Diane's battle will therefore become twofold. First, she must survive the immediate accusation. Second, she must prove that Patty, and possibly Markham, have distorted the truth. That will require more than emotional denial. She will need facts, timelines, contradictions, and perhaps Jack's testimony if he survives. But before any of that can happen, she must make it through the night without losing everything. The tragedy is that every second she spends defending herself is a second stolen from Jack. Every question from Burrow feels like an accusation. Every word from Patty feels like poison. Every statement from Markham feels like another door closing. Diane will be pushed into a nightmare where love, fear, and injustice collide all at once. The Young and the Restless spoilers make it clear that Jack's stabbing will not be a simple medical emergency. It will become the center of a much larger storm. Patty Williams will use the chaos to her advantage. Diane Jenkins Abbott will be forced to defend herself against a frighteningly believable lie, and Detective James Burrow will have to decide whether he is seeing the truth or being led straight into a trap. Dr. Lawrence Markham's role may be the key that makes the accusation against Diane so dangerous, because his confirmation could transform Patty's story from unstable rambling into something that looks official. But in Genoa City, appearances are rarely the full truth, and the people who seem most convincing often have the most to hide. As Jack fights for his life under the harsh lights of the operating room, the real question becomes whether the truth can survive alongside him. If Jack dies, Diane may be left with no witness powerful enough to clear her name. If Jack lives, Patty's time may begin to run out. But until he opens his eyes, everyone else controls the story, and that may be the most terrifying part of all. Diane will continue to insist she is innocent. Patty will continue trying to bury her. Markham may continue strengthening the lie, and Burrow will be forced to navigate a case where emotion, history, and manipulation blur every line. The result is a gripping, high-stakes chapter for Y&R, one where Jack's life, Diane's freedom, and Patty's dangerous deception all hang in the balance. The hospital may save Jack's body, but the truth will need its own kind of rescue, and if Diane cannot find a way to make Burrow believe her before Patty gains even more control, the next wound may not be physical. It may be the complete destruction of everything Jack and Diane have fought so hard to rebuild.